On the morning of October 8, 2001, Milan was engulfed in an impenetrable fog, clouding Linate International Airport in a cloak of uncertainty and near-zero visibility. In these treacherous conditions, a Scandinavian Airlines flight prepared for takeoff to Copenhagen, while a small Cessna business jet piloted by two Germans received clearance for Paris. Unknown to the crews and passengers, these two aircraft were set on a disastrous collision course. This morning would unfold into one of Italy's most heart-wrenching aviation tragedies, claiming 118 lives in an instant. But how could such a catastrophe occur under the watch of seasoned professionals and sophisticated technology? Was this disaster avoidable, or was it a tragic inevitability? Today we dive into the chilling details of that foggy day to uncover the truth behind this heartbreaking disaster. Linate Airport, one of Milan's primary airports, serves as a significant hub in European aviation. Positioned close to the city center, Linate handles a substantial amount of domestic and international traffic. However, despite its importance, the airport's layout in 2001 was far from modern. It consisted of intersecting runways and taxiways that were not ideally suited to manage the volume and variety of traffic it often saw. The taxiways were narrow, and the signage was outdated, a relic from an earlier era when aircrafts were smaller and air traffic was less intense. The primary runway, 36R, stretched over 2,440 meters and was bordered by a complex network of taxis designed to guide an aircraft safely to and from the runway. Taxiway R5 was intended for an aircraft to taxi safely in parallel to the main runway. However, due to the outdated design in Linate's airport and its insufficient signage, it was easy for pilots unfamiliar with the airport to become disoriented, especially in poor visibility conditions. On top of these physical layout challenges was the airport's worn-out radar system. This system, which was designed to monitor aircraft movements on the ground, was not operational at the time of the disaster. This meant that air traffic controllers had to rely solely on verbal communication and their memory of the airport's layout to guide aircraft, a daunting task even in clear weather. And on a foggy morning, this gap in the airport's safety infrastructure would prove to be catastrophic. Now let's turn to the two aircraft caught in this tragedy, each starkly different in purpose and design. Scandinavian Airlines Flight 686, a McDonnell Douglas MD-87, was a commercial airliner scheduled to depart from Milan to Copenhagen, with 104 passengers and 6 crew members on board. The MD-87 was designed for short to medium-haul flights, making it a common sight in European skies. On the other hand, the Cessna Citation II, a 12-seat private business jet, was undergoing a test flight. Luca Fossati, president of the Italian food company Star, was evaluating it for potential purchase. This jet, lighter and more maneuverable than the MD-87, was designed for swift travel between smaller, less congested airports, unlike the busy Linate Airport. Although both aircraft were piloted by experienced crews familiar with their respective planes, neither crew was adequately prepared to navigate the challenges posed by Linate's dense fog and outdated infrastructure. In the early hours of that fateful morning, the Cessna Citation II, preparing for departure to Paris, began its taxi to the runway. However, in the dense fog, the German pilots, who were unfamiliar with Linate's complex layout, made a critical error. They mistakenly turned onto taxiway R6 instead of taxiway R5. This wrong turn put the Cessna on a path that led directly onto runway 36R, the same runway from which Scandinavian Airlines Flight 686 was preparing to take off. The confusion was exacerbated by inadequate signage on the ground. Linate's taxiway signs were not well lit, and some were missing altogether, making navigation a challenge even in good weather. On that foggy morning, with visibility at near zero, the Cessna pilot had no way of knowing they had made a wrong turn. As they continued taxiing, believing they were on the correct path, they were actually heading straight into the path of the departing Scandinavian Airlines flight. As the Cessna slowly navigated the taxiway, communication with the air traffic control tower remained routine. The pilots received instructions, which they believed they were following correctly. However, due to the lack of a functioning ground radar system, The controllers had no way of knowing that the Cessna had deviated from its assigned taxi route. They were operating under the assumption that the Cessna was where it was supposed to be, on taxiway R5, parallel to the active runway. Meanwhile, Scandinavian Airlines Flight 686 had completed its pre-flight checks and was cleared for takeoff at 8:09 a.m. The MD-87, with its powerful engines, began accelerating down runway 36R, building up speed to take off for its journey to Copenhagen. As the aircraft accelerated down the runway, and due to the fog-shrouded intersection ahead, the pilots were unaware of the Cessna, which was slowly taxiing onto the same runway. Less than a minute after receiving clearance, the MD-87 accelerated at around 280 kilometers per hour, colliding with the Cessna Citation II, which had inadvertently crossed the runway. As the MD-87 reached nearly full takeoff speed, it briefly became airborne, climbing to a height of 40 feet before crashing back to the ground. The impact was sudden and catastrophic. The MD-87's left wing sliced through the Cessna, obliterating it and instantly killing all four aboard the smaller jet. Debris from the Cessna was scattered across the runway as the larger aircraft, despite its right engine being lost, continued its uncontrolled trajectory. The pilots of the MD-87 were caught off guard and had no chance to avoid the collision or execute emergency maneuvers. The violence of the impact severely damaged the MD-87's structure, yet it kept moving down the runway, a deadly force now out of control. In the chaotic moments following the collision with the Cessna, the MD-87, heavily damaged but still moving with high speed, veered off the runway. The pilots, struggling to regain control, could only brace for impact as the plane bolted towards the edge of the runway. The aircraft smashed through the perimeter fence and crashed into a baggage handling building situated at the edge of the airport. The impact with the building triggered a catastrophic explosion as the remaining fuel in the MD-87 ignited. Flames engulfed the wreckage, turning the crash site into a heartbreaking inferno. The scene was one of unimaginable chaos and horror. The explosion rocked the airfield, sending a towering plume of black smoke into the sky, visible for miles. Airport personnel who had been carrying out their usual duties were suddenly confronted with a nightmare scenario. Firefighters, paramedics, and other emergency responders rushed to the scene, battling both the intense flames and the overwhelming sense of despair. The once busy baggage handling building was reduced to smoldering ruins, with debris from the MD-87 scattered across the tarmac, marking the site of one of the most tragic aviation disasters in recent history. Despite the overwhelming odds, emergency services launched a desperate rescue operation. Firefighters fought through the intense heat and smoke to reach the wreckage, their hopes pinned on the slim chance that there might be survivors. But the inferno proved too fierce, too all-consuming. The heat was so intense that it melted parts of the aircraft, reducing the chances of survival to nearly zero. Emergency workers pulled back, forced to confront the grim reality that there would be no one to save. All 110 passengers and crew on the MD-87, as well as the 4 people on the Cessna, passed away in the disaster. The crash also claimed the lives of 4 ground personnel who had been working in the baggage handling area, bringing the death toll to 118. In the immediate aftermath of the collision, Linate Airport was shut down entirely. Air traffic controllers, in shock and disbelief, scrambled to divert incoming flights to nearby airports as the full scale of the disaster became apparent. The airport, usually a busy gateway for travelers, was now a crime scene, filled with investigators and rescue workers. The disaster made headlines around the world, casting a dark shadow over Italian aviation. In Italy, the nation mourned the loss of life, grappling with the enormity of the tragedy and the many questions it left unanswered. As news of the disaster spread, it became clear that this was not just an aviation accident, but a tragedy rooted in a series of preventable failures. The Italian National Agency for Safety of Flight, or ANSV, launched an urgent investigation to uncover the root causes of the collision. The investigation quickly zeroed in on several critical failures that contributed to the catastrophe. The lack of proper signage and lighting at the Linate Airport emerged as a significant factor. particularly the inadequate markings that misled the Cessna pilot onto the wrong taxiway. The investigation also revealed a troubling issue with the airport's ground radar system, which was non-functional at the time of the accident. This crucial piece of technology, had it been operational, could have detected the Cessna's incorrect position and alerted air traffic controllers in time to prevent the collision. Miscommunications between the air traffic controllers and the pilots of both aircraft also came under scrutiny, highlighting the tragic consequences of poor communication in high-stakes environments. These findings underscore the severe shortcomings in Linate Airport's safety systems, setting the stage for significant regulatory reforms in the aftermath. The disaster had profound legal consequences. Several airport officials and air traffic controllers were held accountable for their role in the systematic failures that led to the collision. Criminal charges and subsequent convictions highlighted the critical need for accountability and underscored the importance of rigorous safety oversight in aviation. The Linate Airport disaster resulted in several changes in aviation safety across Europe. In the wake of the tragedy, Linate underwent a significant rebuild to address its safety deficiencies. Advanced ground radar systems were installed, allowing air traffic controllers to monitor aircraft movements in dense fog. Alongside this, taxiway and runway signage were updated with better lighting and clearer markings to aid pilots in poor visibility. These improvements were adopted by other European airports, leading to stricter regulations for air traffic control, particularly during adverse weather conditions, ensuring precise and unambiguous communication between pilots and controllers. The Linate Airport disaster stands as a sad reminder of the consequences of complacency in safety standards. It marked a turning point, prompting the implementation of robust safety protocols that continue to influence air travel today. The lessons learned from this tragedy have driven the aviation industry to adopt higher safety standards, ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. The memory of the 118 lives lost on October 8, 2001, serves as a solemn reminder of the importance of vigilance and ongoing improvement in aviation safety. If you found this video insightful, please like and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories to light. Thanks for watching.